that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Happy to be with you. Let's start with the next week's problem that is still working its way through Mexico today. And that is the caravan of illegal immigrants who seemed heck bent for leather to get to the United States. Back on Friday, CBS actually filed this report regarding the president's attempts to keep the border secure.
President Trump may use emergency powers to stop a caravan of migrants from crossing the U.S. border. Thousands of people from Central America are still more than 1,000 miles away in southern Mexico. The president wants to deny them any opportunity to seek asylum here. Weijia Zhang is at the White House with more on that story. Weijia, good morning.
Good morning, Gail. President Trump has repeatedly expressed his frustration over the caravan, and now the administration is considering a wide range of administrative, legal, and legislative action. The president tweeted out a message to the migrants on Thursday: go back to your country, and if you want to apply for citizenship like millions of others are doing. Secretary of Defense James Mattis is also expected to sign an order to send hundreds of active duty troops to the border. Now, those troops will join the roughly 2,000 National Guardsmen the president already sent there in April. The new troops can build barriers and help look for people trying to cross the border illegally, but they do not have the authority to apprehend illegal immigrants. They also won't be authorized to use force except in self-defense. Now, President Trump has turned immigration into a key campaign issue heading into the midterms, and critics say he's only doing these potential moves to stop the caravan for political gain, given the timing, now just 11 days from Election Day. Bianna?
Yeah, there are already threats that this could turn into a legal battle as well. Thank you so much.
Hard to get much more dishonest than that without trying. Let's start with one of the last things. Well, he's only doing this for political reasons. Excuse me, Donald Trump ran on ending illegal immigration. That was a campaign pledge. He has also made every effort that he can as president of the United States to reduce illegal immigration. He has gone to bat against illegal immigration. It is the fact that the Republican Congress does not want to enforce the will of the people, which is to protect the border. They don't want to do that. That is why the wall, which Donald Trump ran on, and we've had prototypes, but it's only partially built. So the idea that Donald Trump just now decided he was going to run on it for the midterm, no, he's been running on this since 2015 when he announced his candidacy. He followed through with it all through the campaign trail, and he is now trying to execute that which he told the American people he would attempt to do. It's not a midterm election issue. It was a general election issue 2 years ago, and now what you have is someone as the elected official trying to do what he promised the American people he would do as a candidate. So that's one level of dishonesty. The other dishonesty was in the quote that they tweeted. They went back to a quote that tweet that Donald Trump had put out on the 25th of October, and they read the last sentence: "Go back to your country if you want, and if you want, apply for citizenship like millions of others are doing." They left out the first sentence. It's only a 2-sentence tweet. "To those in the caravan, turn around. We are not letting people into the United States illegally. Go back to your country, and if you want, apply for citizenship like millions of others are doing." So his message to the caravan people is, we're not letting folks in illegally. Go back to your country, apply for citizenship. You know what? Suck it up. We do not owe you anything. And we don't. But it was reported the way it was reported because it's CBS News, and CBS News is simply part of the current media, which is not leaning right of center. It gets better than that. Just on the 27th of October, Euronews in English reported this about the caravan. You're going to love this, because this whole thing for so many of them is like, we need asylum, we need to be protected from what's going on in our country. Well, here's what Euronews reported about the caravan on Saturday, the 27th of October.
Several thousand Central American migrants say they won't be taking up Mexico's offer of asylum and a package of benefits. They say they're determined to reach the United States and will continue their long trek to the border instead. The government of Mexico is today launching the You Are at Home plan. While in Mexico, you'll be able to get medical attention and even send your children to school, and you will also have a temporary identification to carry out any needed formalities whilst you legalize your immigration status. But Mexico's president didn't say what would happen to the migrants who continue their journey north. Mexico is coming under a lot of political pressure from US President Donald Trump to halt them. In less than 2 weeks, he'll face crucial midterm elections where immigration is high on the agenda. When Trump came to power in 2016, he promised to build a long wall between the US and Mexico, but only a small portion has been built.
As you know, the Mexicans have offered asylum to everybody in this caravan, either in the form of asylum or refugee status via assistance from the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees. So the first part of the plan is to make sure that those who need asylum are granted asylum as quickly as possible so that they do not have to take a dangerous journey to our border.
The migrants are fleeing high levels of violence in Honduras, Guatemala and El Salvador. But like many Latin Americans before them, they're also moving north in search of work and prosperity.
In case you didn't really catch that, I'm going to give you a story that TimeMagazine.com ran on the 27th of October. Here's the title. Here's the byline. Here we go. Migrant caravan continues for U.S. border after rejecting Mexico's offer to stay. Let me get this straight. No one's attacking them in Mexico. They're actually safe in Mexico, and they were trying to flee violence in their home country. And then, of course, there's also the idea that they want to get to the United States so they can work, because there's no work in their country. Well, Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto launched a program on Friday, this past Friday, dubbed You Are Home, which promises, get this, shelter, medical attention, schooling, and jobs to Central Americans who agree to stay in the southern Mexico states of Chiapas or Oaxaca. Excuse me. We can solve your problem right here, right now. You don't need to go any further. Police Commissioner Benjamin Grajeda said that authorities only blocked the highway Saturday to tell people about the government's offer. Here in this truck right now, you can get help. Thousands of migrants in the city of Arriaga rejected the plan Friday night, but said they could be willing to discuss it again once they reach Mexico City. Some fear they will be deported if they take advantage of the program. You've already been told by the President of the United States you're not going to be allowed to come into the country. Why? What do you think is going to happen if you get all the way to the United States? I know what they think will happen. They think the Obama gravy train is still up and running. That's not necessarily true. So you really need to start understanding what this is about. This is not about people trying to escape violence. They've already escaped violence. They're in Mexico. No one's there. Well, Mexicans might send them back. Trump has told you you can't come in here. A reasonable person would say, well, Mexico's willing to let me stay, and Donald Trump says I can't come in, and while I'm here, I can actually have a job, I can get education for my kids, I can get medical attention, and we can have a place so we're not sitting up here sleeping under the stars every night. A reasonable person might take that up, but that's not what we're talking about here, is it? And, oh, by the way, in case you think that this story of caravans has an ending, because this has been going on since 2008, CGTN on the 24th of October filed this report.
Another day of waiting for David Canales and his 3 little children. They fled Honduras because of what he calls a plague of criminal violence and widespread poverty.
In our country, there's nothing. We have to flee from there. Our president does not help. There's no functioning economy. I have these 3 rock rats who need food daily.
Back in Honduras, he was a fisherman in the lobster industry, but the company, like so many others, went broke. The family has been in Mexico for nearly 2 months. On this day, his wife Sandy Martinez has been inside this government building for 5 hours, filling out paperwork for the 3rd time. They hope to get asylum status, which would allow them to live and work in Mexico legally.
On this sweltering hot day, David and his wife Sandy are not the only immigrants waiting here to get news about their refugee asylum requests. There are many others. One migrant just told CGTN, "It feels like we live here 24/7.
If they are not granted asylum, the family plans to join the migrant caravan and, though they have no visas, try to make their way into the United States. 3 more hours go by and Canales decides to go find his wife. They sit and wait another half hour. Canales worries about how they'll pay for food today. This might be the day their asylum claim will be granted, but she's told to return again tomorrow.
After so much time and effort, nothing. We just want to work, and they won't give us permission to do that because we have no immigration or identification documents.
It's time for them to return to the migrants' shelter, where they'll spend another night on the floor and wake up again tomorrow, hoping for something to go their way. Frank Contreras, CGTN, Tapachula, Mexico.
Let me go ahead and summarize this. Trump is making it clear that he does not want these people to come to the United States, which is also the will of the American electorate who voted for him, and not just those who voted for him. The migrants have decided to reject Mexico's offer to grant them asylum, which is what they want from the United States. And why they want asylum here? So they can work, they can have shelter, they can have medical attention, they can have jobs. The very things that Mexico is offering, but they're rejecting Mexico to come here. Why do you think that is? And oh, by the way, just like we have seen since 2008 on a consistent basis, another caravan is forming in Central America to come here. This is not going to stop people. This does not stop until the border is closed. This has been going on for more than a decade. It will continue until the border is closed, until the United States and its people finally say, that's enough. You guys either come the way we say you should come, or you stay where you are and fix the problems in your own country. We do not owe you shelter. We do not owe you asylum. We do not owe you. And if you do not understand what this is really about, which is basically to deny the United States of America's sovereignty so that she can be brought down to the level of Mexico and Central America, then you really don't understand what's going on because you don't want to. This is an attack on the United States. This is an attack on her values, on her ethics, on her prosperity. And until you say, my home gets entered by those whom I welcome and by no one else, and also that no one else has the right to demand entry into our home, then the unwanted visitors will continue. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 FM North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Let's continue on this theme with the migrant caravan, or I'm sorry, as I like to call it, what it is, an illegal immigrant caravan. John Kasich showed up on CNN to discuss his very passionate feelings about it, and I thought it was kind of an interesting conversation. This was back on Friday the 26th of October.
God bless her.
But Governor, it's not representative fully of the American people, because despite these continued attacks and divisiveness from the president, his poll numbers are going up. How do you explain it?
Well, first of all, there's a big chunk of the country that doesn't support him. So let's just kind of look at where things are. Inside the Republican Party, it's shrunken. And, look, things have also become very tribal. Here's what bothers me. We have a caravan coming north. We don't want all those people coming across our border. And there are ways to deal with it. I believe that if we would check those who are legitimately in need of asylum, could be vetted before they even get to the border. But you know what? We're born in America. You know how lucky we are to be born in America and not be born in Guatemala, where they would say to your daughter, if you don't do what we want, we will rape your daughter or we will kill your son if he's not a drug mule. Now, they're marching north, and you know what? It could easily have been all of us, that we're in the caravan, that we're marching north, trying to save our families and save our children. We've got to start putting ourselves in the shoes of other people. We've got to start thinking about the consequences that others suffer, and if we've been spared those by the grace of God, let us be appreciative. Let us count our blessings, and let us reach out to those who have less. And let's stop putting up walls around ourselves and not understanding the plight, the trouble, and the problems of others. It is not right, and the Lord doesn't want it. And our people, at their hearts, want to reach out to others. Look at what they do in these storms. They go and they rescue people they don't know. They put them in their homes. They feed them. That's America. Not all this garbage and this division and yelling and screaming and hatred on all sides.
Governor,
I guess I feel strongly about this, don't I? This stuff's been bubbling up in me for a long time.
Yeah. Your passion is clear there. I'm going to ask you this directly. Are you going to challenge President Trump in 2020?
Jim, the answer to that is I don't have an idea what I'm going to do for this reason. Right now I have a voice, and it's by the grace of God I've earned the voice, and I don't want it to be diminished. I'll tell you something, one way or another, I'm not going to go away. Do I have to be in elected office or run as a politician to have a voice? I'm not convinced of that, but we'll see. All options are on the table. I don't know, but I know this. I'm going to rally the people as best I can in the community to bring out the best of them, to realize that when we solve our problems where we live, we don't care about party identification and philosophy. All we care about then is making a better life for our families and our children. That is what I will be dedicated to doing.
Well, so let me see if I get this straight. So Mr. Kasich is saying the reason, the polls are up, but a great deal of the country doesn't like him, and the Republican Party is shrinking. So then how is it that his numbers are going up? That's Trump's popularity. That's Trump's approval ratings. How are they going up? If a great chunk of the country doesn't like him, then obviously if his poll numbers are going up, it would seem that great chunk that dislikes him is actually shrinking, and those people are being converted. I don't know how that gets missed. As far as the caravan, well, we should vet those people. Isn't that what everybody's been saying? You know what? Vet them there. Don't make them come here. Let's evaluate your claim that you're under such attack in your own country. Do it there. Don't sit up here and show up on the border illegally and then make us have to deal with you. Well, if that is Kasich's position, then what's the difference between him and Donald Trump? And then he goes there, but for the grace of God go we. You know what? You need to really understand what's going on. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. He talks about no walls. Walls aren't right. He really doesn't understand America. And he talks about, look at all these American people. They're out there helping people. They don't know who they are. No, these are Americans helping Americans. Now, to be honest with you, Americans in times of need, they'll help anybody. But the idea that you're saying that we should now reach across people to people who would violate us, period, as opposed to reaching out to another neighbor who is a fellow American, those are two different things. I know you don't understand that, Mr. Kasich, and you don't want to understand that. And then, of course, the interesting thing about him backing off from, well, you're going to run again? No, he's not going to run again. You want to know why he's not going to run again? He got pimp slapped in 2016. You want to know how badly he got pimp slapped? He ran a national campaign. He won one state, the one in which he was governor, and got run out of the race. No, he's not going to run again. He was not what anyone wanted outside the state of Ohio then. And let's remember, Trump won Ohio, and he won it rather comfortably, considering the fact he was running under Republican banner. Nobody wants Kasich. CNN likes to hear Kasich because he bashes Trump. Wow. Shock and amazement. I'm so surprised. But for those of you who really don't understand walls and barriers and this, that, and the other about America and immigration or history, the same CNN, before they understood Trump had a snowball's chance of becoming president, they ran a report back in January of 2016 speaking of Ellis Island. Give a listen.
If I go down this hallway, I'm going to be going to the hospital built to restore the health of people suffering from minor injuries, broken bones, goiters. Even babies were born in that building. These immigrants were expected to do physically demanding work, and if you found that you didn't have the physique or the capacity to do that kind of work, they possibly deport you. Go down this hallway, though, you're going to go to the contagious and infectious disease hospital. We're talking about diphtheria, scarlet fever, measles, whooping cough, tuberculosis, trachoma. Hopefully I survive it, and then I can return to the immigration process. You're going to see some barbaric treatments that would be the medical treatments of the day. For the most part, though, this is the first time a third-class patient would ever see the inside of a hospital. Each pavilion is the same. It's going to be a very large open room in the back where patients are going to be, as far from the hallway as possible. There would have been 14 beds in the room, each bed positioned between each of the windows. There were private rooms, but if you had a private room, you likely were either psychotic or you perhaps had tuberculosis. These are the isolation wards of Ellis Island. The people here are going to be suffering from serious diseases, maybe multiple diseases. So one of the cruel ironies of this room is the better view you have of the statue, the least likely you're going to survive your disease or get into the United States. This is the autopsy amphitheater. There's going to be a darkened room. The surgical lamp's going to illuminate the autopsy space. You're not going to find too many people dying of malaria in the City Hospital in New York. Doctors won't come out to see an autopsy being performed on that immigrant. If you worked here at Ellis Island, you likely lived here. This is the staff house. Very important medical officers lived here with their families, feet away from people dying of diphtheria. Children will be playing in the air enjoying Christmas. 40% of all Americans can trace an immigrant who came through Ellis Island. So these stories need to be told, but it requires guides and volunteers to actually mine these stories and then share with the people as they come here to visit Ellis Island.
Let me bring you up to speed on some things. There has never been a more effective wall against illegal immigration than Ellis Island in New York. Yet 40% of Americans can trace their ancestry to someone who entered the U.S. at Ellis Island. More than 250,000 people who did come to Ellis Island never got to the United States. They were rejected. You heard what the man said. People were expected to do hard and physical labor. If they could not do it, they were not allowed into the United States. If they had certain criminal backgrounds, they were not allowed in the United States. If they had contagious diseases, they were quarantined on the island. And if they survived, then they would be able to go through the rest of the immigration process, where they still had to pass a check of criminality and other. You don't get it. Nothing was more effective in keeping undesirable immigrants out of America than Ellis Island. That island sitting not in New York City, but in the harbor, where you weren't about to be able to swim into the city, kept everything out of the United States that she did not need or want. And a wall that Trump desires would do no less. Right now, the idea is that just like when Ellis Island was open, the United States should control the destiny of those who seek to enter her, not because you want to be here, but because we have a need for you. We don't have a need for half of Central America to abandon their countries that they've allowed to become very bad places and then transport that same mentality with the idea that we should force our way into the United States. If you don't want to come into the United States legally, why would the United States believe that you don't want to transport the same problems you have that you're unwilling to handle in your country? What makes us believe that you're not trying to bring those here? John Kasich doesn't understand anything, and now he wants to give up being a politician because then his voice won't be heard. Now he wants to be an activist. Bless his heart. He will be relegated to the scrap heap of people who just aren't listened to. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, as you are probably aware, unless you've been hiding under a rock someplace, there have been some suspicious letters described as mail bombs, even pipe bombs, sent to various left-leaning individuals here in the United States. And those include former President Barack Obama, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Robert De Niro, Maxine Waters, and you get the idea. So far, we have counted 13 bombs that were sent. Here's the interesting thing, though. Reading this article from the LA Times, this is interesting to me because they basically admit that there was nothing to this. And this is what I mean. The title of the headline for the article is "The Package Bombs Are Heinous and Terrifying, but Not Yet Terrorism." This is on the 25th. Here is a highlighted quote from it. "Sending people even ineffective bombs meets the definition of heinous, but we must wait for facts and evidence to determine whether this was indeed terrorism. They just told you that the bombs weren't about to harm a soul." Whoever did this, and they do have a gentleman in custody, whom they are going out of their way to portray as a a prototypical almost supporter of the current president, although he's anything but. That doesn't matter. There's the whole van that's so plastered over with stickers and political paraphernalia that you can't see out of the windows, and they want you to believe that that's how he was rolling. Okay, I don't believe it. None of this makes any sense to me. But I guess the best way to say it is once you acknowledge that these bombs were not going to do anything, that's interesting. Now, compare that to a few weeks ago, the first of the month actually, when Fox News actually was able to report the following.
Fox News alert 3 separate envelopes suspected of containing ricin, which is an extremely deadly poison, were intercepted, and they were addressed to Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, top Navy Admiral John Richardson, and even President Trump himself. Trace Gallagher, live in our West Coast newsroom, with the very latest on this tonight. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. The Secret Service is now confirming the last letter was addressed to President Trump but did not make it into the White House or near the White House. It was received and detected at a federal mail sorting facility yesterday, but the Secret Service will not tell us, at least yet, which facility that was. The letter did contain the very same substance as 2 letters sent to the Pentagon yesterday, and those letters tested positive for ricin. As you noted, the first letters were addressed to Defense Secretary James Mattis and Admiral John Richardson. He is the chief of naval operations. They were intercepted at a mail screening facility in the Pentagon compound, but the envelopes did not enter the main Pentagon building. Tonight, that mail facility remains under quarantine, and there is still no word yet if all 3 letters are connected, but they are being examined by FBI forensic teams. If you don't know, ricin is a naturally occurring substance that's found in castor beans, but it takes a deliberate and precise act to turn them into biological weapons. It can either be used in the form of a powder powder, a pellet, a mist, or acid, and it can be inhaled, injected, or ingested. Experts say within 36 to 48 hours, it'll begin to shut down major organs. There is no antidote, but you should know it's not always fatal. And, of course, children are more at risk than adults. Remember, in 2013, letters testing positive for ricin were addressed to a Mississippi senator, a Mississippi judge, and President Obama. All three envelopes were intercepted, and the man who sent that letter is now in prison. And, of course, shortly after 9/11, letters containing anthrax were mailed to the offices of two senators and some media outlets. Those threats also intercepted. As we find out more about this sorting facility that intercepted the letter intended for President Trump, we'll get back to you. Martha.
Trace, thank you very much.
So ricin was sent, and perhaps people don't understand this about ricin. Ricin is a very deadly poison. The amount it takes in the proper form to kill somebody is equivalent to about 2 grains of table salt. That's all it's required. Very dangerous stuff. Yes, it was intercepted, so the targets of the letters were safe. But considering what it is, had anybody inhaled that, they may not even be with us anymore. That's how dangerous it is. The New York Times, back when ricin was sent to Obama, went out and did a brief video, of which I have the audio, on, I guess you could say, kind of a history of ricin as a poison.
What is ricin? The chemical, which has been found this week in envelopes sent to the president and to at least one U.S. senator, is a potentially lethal poison.
Beans.
In AMC's hit show Breaking Bad, ricin is the poison of choice.
So what are we going to do with them? Are we just going to grow a magic beanstalk? Huh?
It is a potent toxin found in the seeds of the castor plant. It works by killing cells and can lead to organ failure and death. The United States and the United Kingdom reportedly investigated weaponizing ricin by making it airborne in World War II. Such a weapon was supposedly never made. Reportedly, Saddam Hussein attempted to weaponize ricin in Iraq in the 1980s. Ricin was used in a famous 1978 case in London, where Soviet spies injected a Bulgarian dissident with the poison using a special umbrella. A ricin vaccine is currently being investigated, but there is no known antidote.
So how dangerous is ricin? Soviets in 1978 went out and injected a guy with ricin. Actually, I believe he died. And it was a pellet with 2 small holes in it, enough to fit the equivalent of about 2 grains of salt. And that was full of ricin, and it was enough to kill that gentleman. I don't know why they left that out of their report. The U.S. and Great Britain wanted to make an airborne weapon out of it during World War II. That's how deadly it was. Saddam Hussein, who has no problem or had no problem using weapons of mass destruction against even his own people, and definitely used them also in the war that he had with the Iranians, was looking to find a way to weaponize it as well. This is how deadly this stuff is. And I don't recall all the uproar when it got to President Trump as when it got to Barack Obama. Nevertheless, a couple of days later, after the first report on the 2nd of October, CBS followed up with a report, CBS and other outlets as well, followed up with a report on the 4th regarding those letters that had been sent to the Pentagon and to the White House.
Federal authorities in Utah have arrested Navy veteran William Clyde Allen in connection with the suspicious letters sent to the Pentagon and the White House. The letters sent to Defense Secretary James Mattis, a top Navy official at the Pentagon, and the President were all intercepted before reaching their intended recipients. The FBI found the 2 that reached the Pentagon mail screening facility contained castor seeds, a substance that the poison ricin is derived from. So far, no charges have been filed.
So they found the guy, and you know what? That story disappeared from the news cycle almost as quickly as it appeared. However, now what we have, now remember, ricin is deadly. It is lethal. There is no known cure. There is no antidote. There is no vaccines being investigated. It doesn't exist. If you get hit with ricin, you either get to ride it out or ride it to the grave. There is nothing they can do for you. Now, contrast that with what we've heard lately of all the mail bombs that have been going out. We've heard of Obama, we've heard of Clinton, we've heard of all people, Robert De Niro, we've heard of Cory Booker, Maxine Waters, and others. The interesting thing, going back to what I read to you from the LA Times, sending people even ineffective bombs. The bombs were never going to detonate. Let me put you a comparison. The ricin that they intercepted, had somebody inhaled a powder consisting of ricin, then yes, the intended targets would have been safe, but those people could well be gone. Well, what about the bombs? What if they did? You don't get it. If they've made ricin, it's already deadly. If you don't know how to make a bomb, then you're not hurting a soul. There's nothing to indicate that those bombs were ever going to go off or even could go off. Nevertheless, NBC was quick to jump on the arrest of Mr. Caesar Sayoc and make sure that everybody knows that he is a Trump supporter.
Just hours before the nationwide manhunt for a mail bomber came to an end, suspect Caesar Sayoc was spinning records at this Florida strip club.
You think you know someone, and then you find out there's just something really sick going on up there.
Sources tell NBC News Sayoc likely made the bombs in this van where he was living, plastered with political propaganda supporting President Donald Trump.
Basically, I knew right off the get-go his political views.
Deborah Jaragian says Sayoc was a model employee when delivering pizzas for her, showing up on time, doing what was asked. But she says he shocked coworkers with extreme intolerance.
More than once I went into the bathroom to cry because the vile garbage that he was spewing about the lesbian and gay community, the transgender community, the African American, the Hispanic community was horrific.
Sayoc's long rap sheet dates back to the 90s. In 2002, he threatened to bomb a Florida power company, saying it would be worse than September 11th. His longtime attorney blames his problems on mental illness.
He's not like you and I. He's missing something.
An aunt, afraid to appear on camera, tells us his problems could stem from steroid use.
The only problem he had was steroids. I remember that. Loved steroids. That's why he's so big.
Sayoc's being held at the federal detention center here in Miami. His first court appearance is Monday afternoon. If convicted, he could face up to 48 years in prison.
There is one word that I noticed missing from that report regarding Mr. Sayoc, and that word is alleged. They speak of this as though it's a done deal. Well, he likely made the bombs here, not as in he allegedly made the bombs, but since he made the bombs, and this van was likely the place that he did it, because he lived in the van. You have to really understand how, and it's not really subtle, you just have to be paying attention a little bit. The guy is not who they're telling you he is. First of all, saying, well, he's mentally ill. Well, that falls in with the idea that the media has regarding almost all Trump supporters. You can't support Trump because we know Trump is mentally ill. They've been saying that since, shortly, during the transition. They were trying to find any way they could to discredit him. He went through a physical where his skills, his mental acuity and skills were tested, and he came out with a perfect score. That was dispelled, but they still bring it up. And now what they do is say, well, they tested Trump. They didn't test all you 62 million clowns. Something's wrong with you, because how could you support somebody like this? How could anybody support Barack Obama? Barack Obama is a much worse person than Donald Trump will ever be. He just sounds better. Until you take the teleprompter away, then he starts to sound like what he is, a bumbling and babbling idiot. But that's neither here nor there. If you really want to know what this is all about, first of all, did Caesar Sayoc decide with his mentally ill, steroid raging self to less than 2 weeks before an election start sending out a bunch of mail bombs? If that's what you believe, then let me find my spare copy of the deed to the Brooklyn Bridge, because I need to make a sale to you. The timing is ridiculous. The idea that someone who has all this mental illness would have the presence of mind to do this during an election year. The guy was turning records at a strip club when they came for him. Do you really think this guy is that politically involved? He has Trump stickers. Man, people got stickers for everything. Does that mean that's what they're thinking about 24/7? And help me out with this. What good does it do to blow up Barack Obama? He's irrelevant. Robert De Niro? Who cares what that has-been have to say? Hillary Clinton? She's trying to make herself relevant, but nobody wants to hear from her. And half the other people, more than Cory Booker, outside of New Jersey, who even knows who the guy is? Oh, that's right, he wants to run for president. This is a great way to raise his profile, wouldn't you agree? Have somebody launch a bomb at him, even though it's a fake bomb. Maxine Waters? If there is any more irrelevant elected official in the federal government, I don't know who that would be. Well, maybe the rest of the Clown Brown Caucus, also known as the Congressional Black Caucus. My point is, there is no point to any of this. The likelihood that there is any deliberate act to try to take out people who are left of center by someone who is right of center and politically motivated to do so is specious. It's ludicrous. It makes no sense. Because if he wanted to do this, why did he wait till now? If he wanted to, well, he's got a history. He did a bomb threat back in the early 2000s. Did a bomb go off then? No. Has he ever harmed anybody? No. He's just a little bit obnoxious, maybe a lot obnoxious, and he takes steroids. Yep, that's good enough. Let's put him away. Throw away the key. You're being played. A deadly substance that anybody would have touched or inhaled was sent to the White House, and that didn't get a lot of attention except when it was sent to Obama's White House. But a guy who sent a bunch of craft projects around that weren't going to hurt a fly, all of a sudden, the world is coming to an end. Come on, guys. Got to do better than that. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the first hour. You know, the shooting at the Pittsburgh Synagogue is, for me, tiresome in a number of ways. Let me get this straight, or let me say this clearly. It was heinous. You walk into somebody's place of worship and start shooting people. There's nothing good about that. It's no different in some ways than the Dylan Roof shooting, except for the fact that Dylan Roof came in there and sat down for a half hour and nobody could even figure out that he had a gun, but never mind. So now it's been brought to the Jews. Of course, the unfortunate thing is the Jewish people are not unaccustomed to being singled out for particular heinous behavior by other members of the human race. It's happened before. And I'm not just talking about the Holocaust associated with Adolf Hitler. It's happened before. It happened before that. It's happened since then. It's going on in France right now. They're weary of it, as any people would be, but they also have become accustomed to the idea that this is going to occur. ABC News reported on Saturday when it occurred, 11 people were killed, at least 6 more were injured, including 4 police officers, when a gunman opened fire at a Pittsburgh synagogue. Very horrific scene, one of the worst that I've seen, and that was from the Allegheny Public Safety Director Wendell Hisrick, Police responded earlier Saturday to reports of active gunfire at the Tree of Life congregation, where a service was taking place. The suspect is in custody and has been taken to the hospital. 8 men, 3 women were killed in the shooting. The shooter has been identified. His name is Robert Bowers, 46 years old, lives in Pittsburgh. Used at least 1 assault rifle, whatever that means, and had 3 handguns with him at the time. He's charged with 29 federal counts late Saturday, including several hate crimes. Let me get this straight. He's killed 11 people. Do I really need a hate crime added on there to do what? To get the death penalty? I think he's already got it. And you can only kill the guy 1 time. And I think he should get the death penalty. So, counts of obstruction of exercise of religious beliefs. I wonder if we can find a way to charge some of the LGBT community with something like that. 11 counts of use of a firearm to commit murder. You get the drift. And of course there's the outpouring of sentiment, starting with the president, who's dutifully doing his bit, all the way through to people like Mitt Romney, who's not anyone's elected official right now, on down the line. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, and wow. Washington Post did something that I don't believe they meant to do. They actually published something that mattered. It was talking to 2 members of the congregation that was affected by this shooting. And they were actually talking about what might need to happen afterward. And they published this on the 28th of October.
I found out about this shooting on my way into services here on Saturday morning. We are literally down the road, down the hill from Tree of Life. We are all grieving. We're all horrified. We're all shocked and saddened. Pittsburgh is a very tight-knit community. We've had a security task force in place for the last couple of years. We've had training from the FBI, etc. But we've always had this tension between wanting to be open to the community and wanting to be secure and a safe place. I fear that we're going to move down that continuum towards being a more secure, safe place.
We're looking at all of our aspects for security within Road of Shalom congregation. We certainly have for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and other holidays, we have off-duty police officers, and so we already do have that in effect. Now, should we extend that to our Friday night and Saturday morning services and other holiday services? And so that we'll be looking at a variety of different things that covers our preschool, our religious school on Wednesdays and Sunday mornings, as well as our services on Friday night, Saturday morning, and Jewish holidays. And most likely, we will increase our security measures. Obviously, a tragedy in our community. We're heartbroken. The things that we need to do as a community, we will do together that will strengthen our community.
People are stunned and start thinking about ways in which they live their lives. And our lives really, should they be changed to relate to a new reality? And at the same time, there's a lot of anger about hate, about guns, about all of the other issues around us. But there will be people grieving for a long, long time personally, and as a community. It will be a long time of grief and of healing and of deciding and galvanizing ourselves to be resilient and to go on.
Let me point out a couple of differences with this, and I don't want to take too long with this. You had a man and a woman speaking, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want to hear anything that woman has to say. If you are a Jew, mourning the loss of people through horrific circumstances is kind of tied up in your DNA. It's been going on for a long time. Making the decision whether or not to secure yourself against that or not, and you have to think about that, you're stupid. The gentleman there was saying, hey, we've already done some of this, and do we want to look at these other things? My question is, you haven't already signed those contracts? I'm tired of reactions to shootings, to caravans, to mail bombs, fake bombs, to disease, and every other crisis that shall occur in these United States and elsewhere, no matter what the political climate. I'm tired of all the empty words after the fact. I would that people would simply act. You got a criminal, prosecute him. You have people trying to do something illegal, including entering the country without authorization, stop them. You have someone engaging in some type of strange, questionable, perhaps illegal activity through the mail, then investigate it and find out what the heck is going on. And what about all these diseases? Treat them. Just treat them. Just do something. Whatever is needed. Just do what is needed and then go on with life. We're Americans, not a soap opera cast that needs to just emote about everything and just pour over every emotional nook and cranny. That doesn't feed the bulldog. It doesn't get anything done. It's very simple. A nation of laws. They deal with things. They adjudicate matters, and they keep it pushing. Because when you're going to be a nation of laws, the reason you have laws is because people are going to break them. You handle it, and you move on with life. A nation of laws does that. A nation of laws does not spend all their time up in their feelings about whatever happened last. A nation of men, on the other hand, is nothing other than emotion central, and that's what people are trying to make this country into. Let's talk about how you feel. How would you feel if this happened? What about if this happened? How would you feel? It's not about how would I feel. It's about what am I going to do? And maybe it's time again for Americans to decide whether or not they're a nation of laws which deals with situations and then moves past them, or a nation of men that just gets bogged down and can't do anything about what's happened to them. Maybe you need to think about that a week from this coming Tuesday. I don't care about any population of people more than another. If something bad happens in a nation of laws, then those who have done wrong need to be dealt with. And then those who are going to live on after the horrific act has occurred need to simply be able to do that. And I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
Recently, I went to see the Diamond and Silk movie Democrats. In some ways, it was heartbreaking. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, Diamond and Silk hit it out of the park, exposing the real deal concerning the actions and motives of Democrat Party luminaries like way out Maxine Waters, who lives in a $4 million mansion while thousands of people in her district live in and defecate in the streets. Many people did not realize that crazy Maxine doesn't even live in their district. It was heartbreaking when Diamond and Silk talked to Americans who lost their homes and live in their automobiles. Even more disturbing is that homeless Americans in California have for years been denied assistance, while illegal border crossers are given homes, medical care, schooling, and indoctrinated against our republic. Yet, despite the obvious destructive mission of Democrat politicians and leftist educators, there is an awakening among millions of Americans who no longer are stuck behind the golden donkey and are walking away in droves. I'll be discussing this and much more on the Ron Edwards Experience via AmericaMatters.us SHR Media Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and on Sunday midnights on the Talk America Radio Network. I'm Ron Edwards.
Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com. Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Let's talk a little bit about black racism, shall we? Because that's exactly what you have going on in South Africa. And what they are doing is trying to make it institutional and make it an official part of government there. The only problem is what they are doing is violating property rights, one, and violating right to life, another. One, they are voting and they are starting to take land from white people, white South African citizens who own the land outright legally, take it from them without compensation, and they are also killing white farmers and other whites in South Africa. That's what's going on. There is no more blatant form of racism than you cannot have property and you do not have the right to live if we don't like you. And oh, by the way, we're going to write it into law so that what we are doing, as immoral, as unethical, as improper, as heinous as it may be, is also a matter of law. That's what's happening in South Africa. I don't know if anybody's trying to tell you something different. They're lying. Now, the interesting thing of late has been that the king of the Zulu nation has actually stepped up and spoken out in favor of the white farmers. Now, before you get too excited about this, there's a reason. But even before all this, if you go back to March of this year, you had a bit of a back and forth going on between EFF leader Julius Malema, who is a heinous black racist. He hates white people. No matter what else he tries to tell you, he hates white people, and his motivation for doing things is founded upon nothing other than the hate of white people. That's what it's about. He ran afoul of the king of the Zulu nation back in March. Now, I'm having a bit of a problem, I'll admit, trying to find videos and audio footage that is easily understood because I don't speak those languages, and the translations, though good and understandable, aren't the smoothest. But this is what was going on when Julius Malema took a swipe at the Zulu king back in March.
Malema plays Zulu king over land issue. EFF leader Julius Malema has taken a swipe at Zulu king Goodwill Zwelithini, whom he last year presented with a herd of cattle as a birthday gift, and said people should not shiver when he speaks. When they speak we must shiver. No, we are in the democratic debate about land. Here, the Zulu kingdom must also contribute to the debate we are having here, he said. Malema was speaking yesterday at the launch of his party's election registration campaign in Johannesburg. The Zulu kingdom must never allow white people to put it against the black majority. No one is going to take land from Zulu people. If Inganyama Trust is not being used properly to benefit the Zulus, then let Inganyama Trust be dissolved and let it be returned into the hands of the people. What is this political expediency we are experiencing here? Why should the Zulu kingdom not be treated as one of the institutions under democracy? Last week, Zwelithini said the Inganyama Trust should not be dissolved. The king called on all Zulus to donate R5 each for the fight against the proposed dissolution of the Inganyama Trust. A high-level panel appointed by the Speakers Forum and led by former President Guillermo Montland has recommended that the Inganyama Trust Act be repealed or amended and that the trust itself be dissolved. The trust administers 2.8 million hectares of land on behalf of the Zulu nation. The king's comments seem to have angered Malema, whose party's drive led to the National Assembly's adoption of a motion on land expropriation without compensation. Malema told scores of the FF supporters that the restoration of land will heal the pain of black people. He said any ownership of property by black people was a threat to whiteness. Land in South Africa was taken through genocide. No one left the country when the land was taken from black people. Now we say, let us take from white people. Meanwhile, International Relations and Cooperation Minister Linda Sisulu yesterday called on the international community not to panic over the land issue. There is a parliamentary process underway and all stakeholders, domestic and international, must respect that process and also take advantage of that process to make their input. The president remains committed to engage all stakeholders during this process, Sisulu said.
Let me boil all that down for you. South Africa has decided that they are going to use a quote-unquote democratic process for racial genocide. They're going to deprive the people of land and they're going to kill them. And these people are only those who are white. And they are justifying it. And they are telling the rest of the world community, don't pay any attention to the taking of land that we are doing. Don't pay any attention to that. Don't pay any attention to the genocidal killings that we are doing. Why? Because we are participating in a democratic process, even though blacks are the majority in that country. And in a democratic process, those who are in the minority always get the short end of the stick. That's the way it goes. That's one of the reasons the United States was never made into a democracy. The founders recognized this. Now, since then, there's been back and forth between Malema and the Zulu king. At one time, the Zulu king called Julius Malema a small boy. Remember, Malema was basically saying, no, we don't have kings. We want everybody to come into this democratic process that he has basically hijacked and is controlling. So he doesn't want a dissenting voice. The Zulu nation would be a dissenting voice. Well, the Zulu king has continued to dissent, as we find from this other piece of HD news from October of this year, from the 10th.
Zulu King Goodwill's Levy joins Afro Forum and makes it clear he doesn't support land expropriation without compensation. Zulu King Goodwill's Levy has announced a partnership with lobby group Afro Forum. This cooperation aims to promote agriculture and ensure food security in the country. Both parties are strongly opposed to the expropriation of land without compensation. The king said he's strengthening his relationship with Afro Forum, all in the name of agriculture and food security for all South Africans. The Zulu nation I'm talking about will not exist if we don't have food. That's why I say farmers must come closer so that we discuss what we can do when we talk about agriculture and the availability of enough food in the land. That's why I'm asking Afro Forum of the boys to come and help us, as they have introduced themselves to me that they are willing to work with me and my father's people to uplift agriculture in our land in order to have food. Because when government started talking about the appropriation of land expropriation without compensation, bores down tools. There is no food in South Africa. With next year's general elections around the corner and KwaZulu-Natal set to influence the outcome, it would seem the Zulu Mwami is using the land issues to sway the electorate and send a message to the government. I sent you in July and said go and pray that all those who are against you and me over the land God must make them to fight by themselves. Even now I'm sending you to go and pray before the elections next year. Anyone who wants to be voted for and elected by us, I'm going to talk now. Anyone who wants to be elected by us must come and kneel here and commit that I will never touch your land. The king said he is still waiting for a follow-up meeting with President Cyril Ramaphosa to finalize their discussion on the land under the control of Inganyama Trust.
Very strong words from the king of the Zulu nation. If you want to be elected by us, you need to come here, kneel, and commit that you will not touch this land. Wow. Now, you might think this is some type of internal struggle, but just between white people and between black people in South Africa, and you would not really be understanding what is going on. RT.com published an article back on the 10th of October, around the time of those comments by the king, and he said this. Here's a direct quote. "The Zulu nation I'm talking about will not exist if we don't have food. That's why I say farmers must come closer so that we discuss what we can do when we talk about agriculture and the availability of enough food in the land. That's why I'm asking AfriForum of the Boers to come and help us." Because when government started talking about the appropriation of land, expropriation without compensation, Boers downed tools. There is no food in South Africa. Are you now understanding what's going on here? The Zulu king is not a fool. If you take away the white farmers from South Africa will starve. Well, they got black folks. You know what? They tried that foolishness in Zimbabwe back in 2000, about 5-10 years ago. Here's what happened in Zimbabwe as a result of them taking land from white farmers and effectively forcing them out of the country.
An unmitigated disaster or a turnaround for small-scale farmers. These are the two sides of the coin of Zimbabwe's land grab program. It all started in 1930 with the Land Apportionment Act. Colonial Zimbabwe's land was divided into 3 areas: White, Shona, and Ndebele. All could own property. Land for tribal families were held in trust. But commercial white farmers had large tracts of land and modern farming experience. With lots of money in their pockets, they were able to buy up thousands of hectares of land in high rainfall areas. On the other hand, many black farmers didn't have the modern know-how to farm on a big scale. They were obligated to work small farms in low rainfall areas. It was 1979 when the Lancaster House Agreement was signed between Britain, Zimbabwean liberation movements, and the Zimbabwe Rhodesia government. It was also agreed that there would be a more equitably distribution on land between blacks and minority whites. Robert Mugabe was persuaded to wait 10 years before implementing land reforms. Millions of pounds were donated to Zimbabwe by the UK for this purpose. For the next 21 years, the principle of willing buyer, willing seller approach applied, with economic help from Britain. But the Zimbabwean government did not get enough offers. And when Zimbabwe launched its fast-track resettlement program, Britain's Tony Blair reneged on the Lancaster House Agreement. White owners were forced off their productive land, often together with their farm workers. This happened often violently and without compensation.
I mean, this is my life savings. I've worked hard and I'm old, as you can see. But what do I do now?
In the ensuing chaos of land grabbing, small-scale farmers were once again able to make some progress.
At least my life will be better than last time. There will be a big change, you know. Yeah, I can go and buy a small vehicle, you see, a tractor, then it's a step in life, and I'll be moving.
Critics say the land grabs led to the financial ruin of Zimbabwe. The economy, largely based on agriculture, shrunk dramatically, and many Zimbabweans were dependent on food handouts. There's been a turnaround since 2008, when Mugabe entered into a power-sharing government with the opposition. But while the situation is stabilized, Zimbabwe is still a long way away from the days when it was regarded as the breadbasket of Africa. Shanae Hale, Johannesburg.
Zimbabwe did the exact same thing that South Africa wants to do, wrecked their economy and wrecked their agriculture. They could not feed people. They had to go and bring white farmers back into Zimbabwe so that they could eat. Now here comes some idiot, socialist black fool named Julius Malema, who wants to do the exact same thing, and the tried and true approach is that we are smarter than the guys who tried and failed at it before. We will do it better because it is us. Let me help you. Genocide does not get done well. It is ugly business. It is terrible business, and it tends to destroy more than the people who are its targets. South Africa is in trouble because socialism, black racism, and black socialism are on the rise, trying to hide under the guise of democratic process. It's a lie. It is mob rule. The mob happens to be black. And they don't care what they do to the white minority. They're already doing it. They don't care what they're going to do to their own economy. We've already seen this. We've seen this movie already in Zimbabwe. They're not going to do it better. They're going to do the same thing. And then they're going to have to consider bringing in people who know how to grow food. The problem is Zimbabwe at least had the humility to do that. Julius Malema, a man who basically tells the king he is not someone to be respected, I don't know if he has that type of humility. And if they do this and it fails, and South Africa now has to resort to something else, but they won't bring back the white farmers and work for racial harmony, which is no indication that that's going on, they will destabilize the region. Know that. Mark that. Be ready to deal with it. If you thought apartheid was bad, and it wasn't what you thought it was, this will make apartheid look like a tea party. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, the Megyn Kelly experiment at NBC has finally come to an end. Some will remember that all the excitement when Megyn Kelly left Fox, which she was bound to do, and it was considered a great coup for the left-leaning news organization NBC News to kind of stick it to Fox, which was killing it in the ratings and still is, saying, we're getting one of the primary reasons that you are ahead, and we're going to show you and all this other stuff. And they did not know what to do with Megyn Kelly because Megyn Kelly never fit. Megyn Kelly only fit for a time at Fox. And her primary ability to fit was sitting across from one Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly is a fan of Megyn Kelly. I'm not. I never have been. But her commentary, the wit she has, and her intelligence needed someone like Bill O'Reilly to outshine her obvious flaws that came to the fore as soon as Bill O'Reilly was not alongside her. Her own show on Fox did well, but not always well. Don't get me wrong. I don't think she's, bad, this, that, and the other. I just don't like her. And that's not anything other than I just don't like her. I don't think it's not about anything else. She is a square peg for every media outlet that calls itself a news organization because she is not a leftist. More to the point, she's really not that clued in onto what is and is not fair territory on leftist media. Her latest episode, after being beaten and bludgeoned by NBC to get better, unfortunately, it all unraveled with this segment on Tuesday where she was talking about, she ended up in a panel discussion with two other white women and a white guy who came across as maybe he was homosexual, but she had this to say on matters of race and Halloween costumes, of all things.
You still be able to dress like a moron.
But what is racist? Because truly, you do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface for Halloween, or a black person who puts on whiteface for Halloween. Like, back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressing up as like a character.
If somebody feels like something is offensive to them, then you should say it, and that's fair game.
Yeah,
and you should be able to take it if you're going to dress up like that.
Yeah, you got to be able to take it.
Yeah. One of the things they mentioned is people dressing up like Nazis and this. If you think it's offensive, it probably is.
Yep.
And one of my big complaints just about society right now is, whatever happened, and I know how you were raised. I don't know how you were raised, but
that's questionable.
Yeah. Whatever happened to just manners and polite society?
On Halloween, you've got guys running around with fake axes coming out of their head.
But what I'm saying
it's gonna be jarring.
Right, but what I'm saying is, in polite society, someone who's raised it would not think that dressing as a Nazi is okay.
Yeah.
I don't need the PC.
Or painting somebody. I mean, I think that there are limits to how far you want to go. Because you're making people feel bad.
But I'm saying normal people kind of know where that line is.
Yes, right.
I mean, I have a son that dressed as a fireman with an axe and then insisted on carrying the axe around for like a week.
But there was controversy on the Real Housewives. There was a controversy on the Real Housewives of New York with Luann, as she dressed as Diana Ross, and she made her skin look darker than it really is, and people said that was racist. And I don't know. I thought, like, who doesn't love Diana Ross? She wants to look like Diana Ross for one day. I don't know how that got racist on Halloween.
It's not like she's walking around. I have not seen it. But
you
have
watched it. Me too. And by the way, I haven't seen the other, but if she really wanted to look like Diana Ross, she should have dressed as Michael Jackson. Because they...
I don't know. I can't keep up with the number of people that...
just come on, we're already in the deep end.
Literally. I can't keep up with the number of people that we're offending just by being like normal people.
What I get out of that strikes me most is in polite society, I'm sorry, folks, America is not polite society. No free country is polite society. In a free country, you don't worry about who you're offending. You're worried about speaking your mind. If you are offended by me speaking my mind, that does not become my problem to correct. It becomes your problem to get over. Because if we're going to keep the polite society argument, then we need to bring back slavery. We need to get rid of the 13th Amendment and put people of color and whoever else belongs in that class of people and return them to chained status, to chattel status, and bring back plantations, perhaps. If we're going to go into the polite society argument, we need to resurrect Jim Crow and reenact all those black codes that went into effect after Reconstruction, or during Reconstruction. You see what I'm saying? Because you weren't supposed to talk about those things in polite society. You might offend someone if you were to speak out against Jim Crow. If you were a white person speaking out against Jim Crow at the Citizens Council, then you might offend some of the white women there, and they may have to clutch their pearls. So you can't offend. Get that foolishness out of here. Megyn Kelly is a doofus. She is a societal doofus, and she doesn't fit in anywhere the left holds sway. And they proved that because not a couple of days later, you had this occurring.
Megyn Kelly's show has been canceled following her blackface comments controversy. E! News confirms the host's 9 a.m. Today hour is over. The news comes after her emotional on-air apology in which she stated she had learned from the situation.
And I want to begin with 2 words. I'm sorry. I have never been a PC kind of person, but I do understand the value in being sensitive to our history, particularly on race and ethnicity.
The day before that, Kelly received immense backlash for her comments during an all-white panel on why she believed costumes based on race or ethnicity shouldn't be frowned upon. Her statements went viral.
You do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface for Halloween, or a black person who puts on whiteface for Halloween. Like, back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressing up as like a character.
NBC has yet to say whether Megyn has been fired completely from the network or if she is still involved in some capacity. Kelly has not appeared live on the show since her apology episode. NBC announced the rest of the week's broadcasts have been replaced with reruns.
You got to be kidding with me. For what I heard, and I played the entire clip that I could find of her comments on race, that you're going to run somebody off the network? Because I'm not a Megyn Kelly fan. I don't watch her show. I stopped watching her show when it was on Fox, when I was still watching Fox. I don't watch Fox hardly at all anymore. Sometimes I'll catch the news. Sometimes I'll catch Tucker Carlson. But most of it, if I want to see it, there's a video clip that I'll watch on YouTube. Yes, if I hear something about it. So I'm not a fan, but you heard that, and you're really going to run somebody off a TV show because of that? You know, this is the chicken crap that horse crap calls bull crap. It's ridiculous. And it's just, it gets to the point where I don't know if I'm going to watch, I don't know, when you see stuff like that happening on quote-unquote television, for-profit television, it makes you want to watch nothing but college football or tennis or something where people's political problems are not on display. Which means you can't watch the NFL, you can't watch the NBA, you can't watch most pro sports. Maybe you can watch some Law and Order reruns. Maybe you can watch The Dog Whisperer. I don't know. This is ridiculous. But that's where you are right now. And you got to remember something. The words you heard, if something is probably offensive, or you think it might be offensive, it probably is, and you shouldn't say it. Really. Black people should not be drinking from water fountains that colored people can't use. Colored people should not be relegated to swimming pools that whites won't use and that are dangerous for anyone to swim in. That's probably going to offend somebody. Should I not say it? Should I not say it? You know what? If we keep allowing illegal immigrants into this country who commit crimes, then that's not a good thing for the people in this country. We ought to stop that. And I don't need, let me say this, I don't need comprehensive immigration reform to enforce the current laws and keep people from illegally entering this country and believing that they have a snowball's chance in the sun's corona of staying here if I catch you. I don't need to do anything to run them out of the country if they don't belong. Well, you're going to offend somebody. I don't care. You'll never be on TV. I'm not trying to be. Well, what are you trying to say? I'm trying to say what's true. And I'm trying to represent myself as what I am, an American. Say what you want. That's why we have a First Amendment. If I can't handle it, I need to figure out a way to deal with you. I'm not talking about beating you up or shooting you. I need to figure out a way to deal with you. Because that's what grown people do. Which is one of the reasons you need to do something about all these women opinions showing up everywhere governing public television. And when I say public, I'm not talking about NPR. I'm talking about the airwaves, whether they be video or audio. You need to get all this womanism out of here. Get a male opinion in there for once. Hear somebody say something where the only thing you're worried about is, I guess that's what he thought. Let everybody digest it and then you move on. Because this nonsense, it's just nonsense. On the positive side for Megyn Kelly, she has an 8-figure contract to the left side of the decimal point that NBC is going to have to pay. Now, will they ruin her career? Maybe. But if you're going to give me $69 million and tell me I can't work again, somehow I do believe that I'm going to be all right. She'll be all right. But the time is coming when you need to start holding these idiots responsible for corrupting the public airwaves to the point where there's nothing worth watching. And the only opinions that can be expressed are those that leftist women agree with. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, I live in the Los Angeles area, but I am not a Los Angeles Dodgers fan. But there is something that I dislike more than I dislike the Dodgers, and I really don't dislike them. It is seeing people mess up good situations for no reason. And what I'm watching, because, and I say I'm commenting on this because I think Dave Roberts is a managerial disaster for the LA Dodgers or for anybody else. And he's doing the same thing this year that he did last year. He took a team that was fully capable of winning the World Series, and he has turned them into a team that is on the brink of losing their second consecutive World Series. What am I talking about here? Last night, the Dodgers had the opportunity to tie the series at 2 games apiece after losing the first 2 in Boston. In some ways, you're like, okay, you lost the first 2. That's just Boston winning on their home field. You got 3 games in a row on your home field. If you can win all 3, which is not an easy task to do, then obviously you'll go back to Boston with a chance to win and hoist the series trophy. And then Dave Roberts happened. What do I mean? Well, the first thing is he started Rich Hill. And Rich Hill was pitching a sparklingly good game. He went through 6 innings. He'd given up 1 hit to the Boston Red Sox, who had been destroying people. Boston's a very good offensive baseball team. But he had dominated them. He had held them to 1 hit through 6 innings. We get to the 7th inning, and he walks the leadoff guy. Well, maybe that's concern. Maybe he's getting a little bit tired. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly how Dave Roberts seemed to describe the situation that caused him to make one of the worst managerial decisions of this year's World Series.
Dave, can you just take us through a decision to take out Rich in the 7th and go with Alexander and then Madsen?
Well, prior to that, before the top of the 7th was going on, it was a long 6 for us, and I had a conversation with Rich, and and we talked about it. He said, keep an eye on me, and I'm going to give it everything I have. Let's go hitter to hitter, and just keep an eye on me. So right there, I know Rich did everything he could, competed, left everything out there. So when I hear that and see what he's doing, and he goes out there, and you want him to go as long as he can. So the walk to Bogarts, started to lose a little bit, then got back into the next at bat with Nunez, and so made some pitches that he needed to, and so right there at that point, you get an out, and we're talking about hitter to hitter, guys on first base, and you got a lefty on the bench or in the pen that has done it all year long, getting lefties out and trying to keep those lefties on the bench. Moreland, Devers, and so you figure you got a chance to get a guy who matches up really well against Holt, and then to potentially go to Vasquez and keep the other guys off the bench. And so it was more of just the conversation I had and just realizing that, man, this guy gave it everything he had, and we got to pick each other up.
What problems have you noticed with Kenley Jansen tonight and last night? And given his World Series performance last year, do you think it's more of a mental thing or maybe more physical thing?
I definitely don't think it's physical. I know that coming into last night, he had 5 days off, and he was as fresh as any of our relievers. Mental, there aren't too many more mentally tough than Kenley. I think it's just one of those things where you look at the 3 innings he's thrown, he's made a lot of quality pitches, and the 2 mistakes that he did make that the cutters didn't cut, and he gave up 2 homers. So I don't think it's a mental or physical thing.
Let me tell you what it was. I was watching that game. It was a dread thing. When I see Kenley Jansen out there on the mound, I see somebody who just doesn't look like a closer, like a dominant relief pitcher, even though he's a hard-throwing individual. He looks like somebody who's trying to hope his way through the inning. Well, last night that didn't work for him, but more importantly, he went to Alexander, who promptly allowed another base runner, and then gave up a 3-run home run. So Rich Hill went 6 1/3 innings of one-hit baseball, but before the 7th inning was over, a 4-run lead, because that's what they had going, coming into the 7th. They had scored 4 runs in the bottom of the 6th, the Dodgers had, and then they go in and give that up the next inning after a pitching change. Why would you change pitchers? This would not be as big a deal, but for those who remember, and I do, the same thing happened last year. This is from DodgersWay.com, talking about the reasons why the Dodgers lost the 2017 World Series against the Houston Astros. Quoting, hindsight is 20/20, so I'm sure Roberts and the Dodgers will be rethinking some of these mistakes. These will haunt the Dodgers. The first of these mistakes in this series came in Game 2 in Chavez Ravine, a questionable decision by the skipper Dave Roberts. Rich Hill was pulled from the game after just 4 innings of work. Hill was dealing and going pitch for pitch with Astros ace Justin Verlander. Hill gave up just 1 run on 3 hits. He was pretty good. Roberts had a formula that had worked all season, all postseason long. That was for the starter to get through the lineup twice and get to the bullpen in once the 3rd time the lineup was coming up. Though it did work all postseason, this is a different stage. A.J. Hinch was doing exactly what Roberts should have done, stick to the hot hand. Yes, I understand why I try to fix something if it's not broken. See, this is the whole point. In the playoffs, things happen. In postseason play, things happen. The 162 regular game season is just something guys are trying to get through. But when it's winning time, and you have somebody who has a hot hand until it cools, you don't go away from them. You do that in football, in baseball, in basketball. You go with the hot hand. He pulled Rich Hill last year, and Rich Hill was hot when he got pulled last year. Dodgers end up losing the game and the series. Because, why? Well, it's just one game. No, because when he went to the bullpen too early, you end up gassing your relief pitchers, throwing off your rotation. And then there's, of course, the terrible outing that Yu Darvish had in games 3 and 7, and I don't know why they didn't pitch Clayton Kershaw in game 7. They said it was Yu Darvish's turn. Yu Darvish hadn't even been in a Dodgers uniform to figure out how to take it off. Clayton Kershaw last year was still more than a shadow of his former self, and in a game 7 of a World Series, I know who I'm going to go with, but he chose Yu Darvish, and the Dodgers were destroyed. He chose to pull Rich Hill last night, gave up a 4-run lead, cut it to 1 run, and then the very next inning he sent Kenley Jansen out there, who got shelled the night before giving up a home run, and then last night gave up another home run to tie the game. That was in the 8th inning. In the 9th inning, Boston exploded for 5 more runs, and the game was pretty much over, putting them up in the series 3-1. What is my problem with Dave Roberts? How can you be with these guys all this time and not know what to do in crunch time. And this is 2 years in a row now. This is 2 consecutive years that you demonstrated that all the time you spent with him through the regular season and the division series and the championship series, and you still don't know. Well, we got a formula. I go to my analytics. Yeah, you go to your analytics. You know what? Analytics need to come with the same disclaimer that comes with every investment prospectus, which is prior performance is no guarantee of future results. Just because you think you have a formula, I'd rather have a guy with a hot hand than a formula that makes me bring in somebody who hasn't been in the game. Now, Donald Trump actually got under Mr. Roberts' skin by tweeting about it, and when Dave Roberts heard about it, his reaction was muted, but noticeably he was disturbed.
President Trump tweeted about you and your moves tonight. I don't know if you heard about that, but
I didn't hear
he was critical. He said, watching the final innings, it is amazing how a manager takes out a pitcher who was loose and dominating through almost 7 innings, Rich Hill, and brings in nervous relievers who get shellacked, 4-run lead gone. Managers do it all the time. Big mistake. What is your reaction to that? Had to ask the question. Sorry, Dave.
The president said that. I'm happy he was tuning in and watching the game. I don't know how many Dodger games he's watched. I don't think he was privy to the conversation. That's one man's opinion.
Dave Roberts' problem is this. What Donald Trump said is not necessarily just one man's opinion. It's this man's opinion. I watched him do this last year. And Los Angeles, you know, as much money as they spent on the Dodgers, they deserve to get a championship out of them if they get an opportunity. They could have had it last year if not for Dave Roberts. If they miss it this year, it's going to be for the same reason. Dave Roberts mishandled the pitching staff in the biggest series of the season, the World Series. He did it. He did it in 2017, pulling Rich Hill, letting Kenley Jansen go out there and get shelled, putting Yu Darvish in there as though, well, I got to use my new toy. He gets shelled, and you don't use Clayton Kershaw enough. This year, Clayton Kershaw is not what he was. He's just not. You don't have that to go to. And I don't know if the series will last long enough for you to go to him anyway. If the Dodgers lose this World Series, and it looks like they are, being down 3 games to 1 at the start of Game 5 here, all I can say is, if Dave Roberts is back as manager, I don't think the Dodgers will ever have a chance to win a World Series. They have the players. They have an adequate team to win a World Series. Where they're missing talent is at the manager slot. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. I want to talk about a strange fraternity tale that I kind of wish were more common. I got this from a Facebook associate. They posted something about a column that came up in legal advice. Guy says he got a girl pregnant and she wanted to get an abortion, but he didn't want that. She ended up not getting one, but now she is not involved at all. Says they weren't in a serious relationship. After the birth of the child, she had no desire to see it. It happened to be a son. Went to court to figure custody and support and try to get that figured out. And now he has full legal and physical custody. Her name is on the birth certificate, but she has no custody, no right to visitation, or to make things like medical or education decisions. She didn't want any of that. Every month she pays 125% of the court-ordered child support. She says that if I ever marry someone who wants to adopt him, she'll agree, but until then she'll pay support. It's been this way since our son was born. He goes on to complain that he's raising the child all on his own. Let me say this. There are a lot of men out there who, if they were in that situation, they would be thanking God every night to be able to raise their children without the mother interfering. Because there are a lot of people who are in, baby daddy, baby mama drama situations where all that happens is butting heads, interference, bad feelings, and at the end of the day, with most situations, the women end up raising children. And remember the statistic which is there. 3/4 of those children, primarily males, who end up incarcerated, they were raised by women. Period. If only we could get the legal system to recognize what social studies have found. We don't suffer in this country, or any country in that matter, because of a lack of mothers. Single motherhood is nothing special. Fatherhood is the answer to keeping children as close to the right path as possible. If you have the best situation, of course, is to have the mother and father in the same home. Unfortunately, you don't get that as much as you'd like. When you have to choose one parent, everything in the outcomes we see say that you're better off with the father. But that's just not what happens in our society. The courts say that they've made a change. We see them as equal now. To be honest with you, you need to tip the scales in favor of the male. That's just the way it is. I know that's not going to happen, but I'm not here to talk about, you got to make an adjustment. I'm just going to say what works. What works is fathers. Well, men don't want their children. No. You've had decades of men being conditioned by a very simple thing. When the woman jumps up and down and screams, he doesn't just deal with her. He deals with the county and the state coming against him, against his parental interest. If you took that away and really had equal footing, you wouldn't have as many single mothers in this country or any other country. If you really think men don't love their children, I don't know what to tell you. If you think women love them more, again, I don't know what to tell you. If you think that women raise children better than men do, go look at the prisons. And if that doesn't convince you, I'm not exactly sure what will. This young man is complaining that he's raising his child. She gave you a free path. Find yourself a good woman if that's what you need to pull this off. Someone who's going to respect you, care about you, and someone who actually thinks your son is a special young man, a special boy. The woman who gave birth to your son has already said, if you find someone like that, she will give him up. She's already given him up. There's no sense trying to make... You said you weren't in a serious relationship in the first place. Why would you try to beat that horse? You have a precious gift in a son. If you're overmatched, and don't get me wrong, I don't recommend single parenthood for anyone. It's tough. But if you feel overmatched, then why don't you do something about that? But first you got to get yourself together. Your mind isn't right. If you're going through all this, but you love your son, but you resent him, he says that in his letter. That's ridiculous. But I understand. Family tries to help when they can, but he does it most of the time. Yes, it's your son. If you need help, there's help designed for that. You have the opportunity to do successfully what many women do their best and try to do, but they're simply not biologically equipped. If you don't have a Y chromosome, you don't know how to raise a Y chromosome. You have a gift. If you need help from somebody who does not have a Y chromosome, that's fine. That's part of the design. Get your act together. Get your mind right. Stop looking at your son as though he's causing you problems. Stop looking at the woman who's not there as though she's supposed to solve what she's already told you she won't. She's giving you money, and that's all she intends to give you. You would make a profound difference in America in a generation if we had more men in his situation, but without his jacked up attitude. We've done a number on men to teach some of them not to appreciate either their children or the opportunity to raise them and to make decisions for them. I applaud the court, and I even have to give the young lady some credit. She recognized this is not a situation she wants to deal with, so instead of making his life miserable, at least making an effort to make it miserable, she says, I'm out, and I will pay even more money than I'm supposed to. If you can't make that work, the problem is not with the woman who's not there. The problem is with the guy that you see when you brush your teeth. Get it together, guys. Raise children. Your children, whether by birth, by adoption, by marriage, if you're stepchildren, raise the children. If you want to see children in this country get better, men have to raise them. And that's our show. God bless you. God keep you. My prayer. And until next week, when I hope to speak with you again, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.